Right, anyway, let's start again. Welcome to this month's London Web Performance. Nice to see you all here. I'm going to have a talk from Peter from Samsung Developers on, don't take another picture of me. The last one is a bit crap, was it? There you go. Well, I think this one will be a bit rubbish as well, but there you go. From Samsung, he's going to talk about his experience with progressive web apps, service workers alike, and a little app that he's kind of developed through there. So again, it's like someone who's kind of like almost started from scratch and can share some valuable experiences for those of us. I certainly haven't done it because I'm not a coder, but that's a different kettle of fish. But yeah, so I really think that'll be a really valuable talk for the group. In terms of the usual thing, if there was to be a fire alarm or anything like that, you have to go out via the stairs. Don't use the lifts. Toilets are out across the way through the corridor, straight across and on the right hand side. In terms of the meetups that we've got coming after this one, first is a little plug for Velocity, which is kind of starting on Sunday with WebPerf Days Amsterdam, followed by like 2 days of actual conference and a training day after that. So I don't know if is there any other people going. I'm going, so we've got a couple. Oh, we've got a few people going. So anyway, we'll see. We've got a couple of speakers in the room as well. So obviously Adam giving his talk that he gave here last month, tuned up a little bit more, I believe, from early messages that he gave me. We're looking pretty good on good on stuff. So thanks for that feedback last month. What's coming up after Velocity? I think it's on December the 6th. We're going to kind of like run like little, because it's Christmas, and sometimes I know like a lot of Christmas parties and all that kind of stuff to come to. That we're going to kind of like do little snap ignite type talks that night. So if anybody wants to kind of do like a 5-6 minute talk about what they're working on, doesn't have to be particularly well prepared. Suddenly you're prepared to get up here, show a few slides and talk about what you're doing. That'll be good by me. All right, so make it a little bit more of a fun and looser night, and then we'll follow it up with one of the infamous London Web Performance quizzes. Which is going to be go out there, study the website, look at all the videos of the talks that we've had this year, because the questions are going to be based on those. So we'll try and make that a bit of fun as well. And then in January, we're not going to be meeting on the first Tuesday of the month, because that is typically going to be the first day back for nearly everybody after the holiday season. So that's going to be on Tuesday, January the 10th. And it's going to be Ada, also from Samsung, and she's going to be talking about web VR. So that's going to be a really interesting talk. We did a hack at Ticketmaster, not last Friday, but the Friday before, and one of the ones that actually won an internal award for like best one was based around web VR. So I know that we've got some interest in that technology. So I'm hopeful that a lot of people come along to, because it's not something that very many people really know that much about. So it'd be really great to hear from Ada. So that's everything from me, I think. And then, so I'll hand over to Peter. We'll talk through till about 8, usual thing. Questions, pizza, beer, go home. But if you want to come to the pub, we'll probably be going to the Rake, so you can go there too. All right, so I'll now hand over to Peter. Thank you very much. Just fix that. Right, whistle amongst yourselves again whilst we do the tech changeover. Just hold that a sec. Yep. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay, we've got a good enough connection on this connector. There we go. I think we're good. I shall just go and right. Does your mic work?
Does my mic work? Yes.
Yes. There we
go. Cool. Hi, everyone who I haven't met already. I'm Peter. And as Perry was just saying, I recently joined Samsung, and I joined this team It's Samsung Internet. It's the mobile web browser that is installed by default on Samsung phones. And I joined the developer advocacy team that has just been started up to start sharing about this and start helping developers to know what our browser offers and to know about the technologies behind it and to help you to do things like progressive web apps. This is our team. You might spot the person on the left here in the audience somewhere. His name is Diego. I think a lot of you know Ada from FT Labs, and there's me, and I think some of you may know our boss, Dan Applequist as well, Torgo. And so this is the Samsung Internet team. And I thought it was appropriate to start off with a selfie because this talk is about my application, SnapWhat, which is to let you draw on images, on photos, and on your live camera feed to draw annotations and stamp emojis on top. So I'm going to start by doing a live demo, I hope. If no one, if no one minds me, you don't mind me capturing some of you in the background, right? Here we go. Whoops. So hopefully you can just about see that there. So I can choose or take a photo. Oh, you can't see it up on the screen there, but there's a native prompt that's just come up, choose an action camera or document, so you can use your camera immediately or choose one that you've taken before, and that's using input type equals file. Or you can, recommended, get user media and switch on your camera for a live view. So here we are. And the idea is that you gather people around you and you can draw things on the screen to say, hey, whoa, sorry, let's start again. Hey. But then the best bit of the emojis, so let's put an emoji on me here and blow that up a bit. There we go. And if I can try and get some of you in the background as well. There we go. And I will tweet it. I forgot to sign out from my testing account and sign in with my real account. So this is tweeting from Peter's testing, but never mind. Can't quite be bothered to log out and log in again. And let's do the hashtag LDNWebPerformance live. And there we are. Hopefully, depending on the connection, you may see that crop up in the Twitter feeds as we now proceed. So let's switch back. Did that come up? Let's have a look, shall we? You'll see the other testing ones from I did earlier as well. Yeah, there we go. Yay. Okay.
I'll give it a like.
Oh, thank you. All right, so that's SnapWhat. This is one that I made earlier. You have to always be prepared in case of demo fail, etc. Hello, LDNWebPerf. Emojis for the win. SnapWhat is not to be confused with this other app that you may have come across before called Snapchat. Any similarity is purely coincidental. At least that's what I'm telling any lawyers who ask. And of course, yes, this app was inspired by some of these social apps that are popular at the moment that have these story-like features. But really the idea of SnapWhat was to, first of all, just have a learning experience, try and develop a progressive web app, get to grips with some of these technologies and see if we can do this kind of thing, these kind of experiences with a pure web application. So it's a progressive web app, and what does that mean? Well, you probably hear lots of different definitions of it, but the way I like to describe it is that it's really taking the best of the web, the best of websites, the best of the web that we know and love, and combining it with the best of native apps. So the best of web, we have it, of course, being multi-platform. This is not just going to work on, this is certainly not designed to just work on one platform. We're designing it to work across all of the web platforms. Frictionless, you don't have to go to an app store and download this first. You can just bring it up, someone sends you the link, tap on it, you're there straight away, and you can use it straight away. It's discoverable in any search engine. If I had done any SEO or anything like that, but any decent search engine, you can put your you can discover your progressive web app, and it's accessible not just for users, although that's obviously hugely important. It's also accessible for us as developers. We don't have to download an SDK. We don't have to pay a fee. This is just the web. But it's also combining it with the best of native, which is things like these kind of things that people still think of as purely native features. Things like adding to the home screen, proper offline support, which we now have, instant load. So one of the things that people keep talking about native apps is they tap the app and it launches straight away and they have that experience going. And with service workers and loading from a cache immediately, we can have this near instant load experience. And even push notifications as well. The other way I like thinking about progressive web apps, this was a quote that came out from some Google progressive web app training, a boot camp that we went to a few weeks ago. And I think it was Sam Dutton. He said, progressive web apps are all about removing friction. And when you think about it, yeah, this really applies to everything. It's removing that friction of going to a store and having to download something before you use it. It's also about removing the friction that unfortunately users may now have become familiar with from some websites that are too slow and too laggy. And we need to try with this progressive web app era to go beyond that and to try and deliver native-like experiences. So I wanted to share some things that I've learned along the way of developing out this Snapbot app, which is pretty basic, as you've seen, and it's just kind of fun. But even just doing this has been quite a good learning experience, I think. And I'm going to share some of those things, starting with, of course, things around service workers, which are the core kind of fundamental crux of progressive web apps in terms of this is what's really enabling us to do the offline work, and it then enables push notifications and a lot of other things that are going to come in the future as well. So one thing I learned fairly early on was not to cache too much on install. When I started off writing my first service worker, I thought, well, hey, on install, I'm just going to cache all of the static resources that my app needs. And then you'll have it all downloaded and all cached and everything will be great. And then I added lots more emojis, this many, in fact. And this load time of the app started grinding to a halt. And I was thinking, wow, this is not so good. What's this progressive web app thing about? But I realized, speaking with people like Adi, my colleague, that really you shouldn't be caching too much on install. The install cache is about installing the minimal amount that your app needs to function and to start with. So it's really, as Google described it, your app shell. Don't really have a slide for this, sorry, but it's really about caching your app shell. And then from there, once you have that first experience, then you can be on fetch, caching other resources as you're fetching them. So I removed a whole bunch of the emojis that I was caching on install because I only really needed to load up that first one that's visible when you go to the app straight away, and the others I could just cache on fetch. But the other thing I realized was that I didn't need to have these emoji images anyway, because emojis are just there by default on these OSs now, right? They're in Unicode. And I had a little look at the support and I figured it's good enough. So I ditched all of the emoji SVGs, which are the ones on the left, and I'm just using actual native Unicode emojis now, which saved about 2 megabytes, which is nice. Then the next thing I realized was that, well, first of all, I started hard coding my list of resources to cache on install. And as you've seen, I had quite a lot of resources then after a while. So I looked into generating that list of resources to cache in the first place. There's a few ways of doing it. Have any of you used SW Precache? A couple of you. Okay, cool. SW Precache is a node module that it generates a service worker script for you. So you can give it a glob, a file path with a wildcard, and you can say, I want to cache these kind of resources, and can you just build me a service worker, please, that does all that caching for me, and I don't need to worry about it. And so that's quite nice if you want to do that. I was a bit put off by this idea of having the whole service worker generated for me, and I certainly didn't want to do that to begin with until I'd written my own one. So I haven't used SW Precache myself, but I think there are cases where it could be quite useful. If you just wanted to throw offline support onto something quite quickly, perhaps these slides, for example, where I don't necessarily need to be hard coding a service worker script for this. I might just throw something at it quickly. SW Precache could be quite useful. And this is just a quick example of using it inside a Gulp task, so you can build that into your other build tools that you have. I was actually using Rollup though. Any of you using Rollup? One. Okay, cool. Rollup is neat. It's a JavaScript bundler, and it's designed to be pretty lightweight. It's not really supposed to be a whole build tool, quite to the extent that, say, Gulp or Grunt is. But it does handle your JavaScript bundling, and you can build Babel transpiling things into it. So I was using that, and I asked Rich Harris, the creator, if he had an example of auto-generating the list of static resources to cache on install using Rollup. And very kindly, he seems like a very nice man, he responded on Twitter, and it pretty much immediately came up with an example that he linked me to, and the URL's up there for those who can view it, bit.ly/rollup-precache. And essentially it works by having a little virtual module, and you can, in your service worker script, you can have this look at your file system and generate the file list and expose it as /0 initial resources. /0 is just a convention to show that it's a virtual module, not from the file system. And then in your, so in your service worker script, you just say import the resources and then cache all of those things for me, please, which is quite handy. But actually, as I told you just earlier, I ended up removing all of those emojis anyway. So I ended up only having a few static resources to cache on install after all. So in the end, I pulled this out again because I thought it was a bit overkill for just a few resources. But if you're doing something like that, using the file system and getting a list of your resources to cache with the service worker, it's worth bearing in mind that what you're actually caching are URLs, they're URL resources, not files. And this confused me a bit at first because I'd seen a lot of examples out there that were the variable name was something like files to cache equals blah, blah, blah. And it tripped us up actually at that Google workshop because one of the things that came up was that if you didn't actually cache /and/index.html, a user could come to the wrong URL, the one you didn't cache it under, and they wouldn't get that. They wouldn't get what's in the cache. And it's extra strange because it looks as though it actually only does result in one cache entry underneath, even though you're telling it to cache under /and/index.html. So this is one I might need to look into again. And I wonder if it might change, but I thought I should let you know something to be wary of. Who's used Lighthouse? Yes, cool, a few of you. Lighthouse is a Chrome extension from the Googlers, and it's a handy tool that builds a report on your progressive web app, and it gives you a score, and it goes through a run through of things that you have or haven't done or included, and it checks if you've actually got offline support working correctly and everything like that. And this is extra handy, I found, because at one point it actually raised a bug that I hadn't realized I'd broken my service worker script, and it wasn't actually, offline caching wasn't actually working anymore. And Lighthouse picked that up before I had picked that up myself by actually testing it offline. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth trying out. And it's an interesting thing to think about rendering and server-side rendering and client-side rendering. How does all that fit in with progressive web apps? Well, this is what Google recommend anyway, in order of preference. First is to server-side render the app shell and the initial page that you want to render inside it, and then have your client-side rendering take over and handle the rest of the routing. If you can't do that though, they suggest having server-side rendering of just the app shell, and then having JavaScript fetch the rest of the resources on load, including that first page and everything that you need to display. If you can't do that, then server-side render everything, and if you can't do that, then client-side render everything. And actually, in SnapWhat though, because it's really quite basic, and there's not that much to it in terms of the pages that are in there. There's, we're not going and fetching new news or anything like that. I've actually just server-side rendered all of the HTML for all of the kind of few pages and modals and things that are displayed in it, and things are just hidden until we want to display them in JavaScript. So it's kind of number one-ish in this list. Who's used SW Toolbox? 1, 2, cool. So Service Worker Toolbox, I didn't use for SnapWhat because, again, like with SW Precache, I thought the first time I want to do this, I want to do it myself and see what was going on. But this looks like a really useful resource, and certainly if I was doing something more complicated, I'd definitely be looking at SW Toolbox, because this is another thing from Google, and they've gone through a lot of the hard edge cases around this stuff, and it provides you an easy way to, for example, say, hey, look for this in the cache first, and if you don't have it there, then fall back to actually going to the network and then fetching it from there. And you can just use it like this, saying any routes that are under images, just use that caching strategy. Or you could do it the other way around, of course, and you could say, try the network first and then fall back to the cache. And you might want to do this if you prefer getting fresh content. You think maybe people are likely to be online, they get the latest if you can. But if that fails, they're offline, their connection gets interrupted, then fall back to the cache if you've got it. And this is actually basically what I'm doing in SnapWhat, but not using SW Toolbox. Another interesting one is you can do fastest, which basically sets off the cache and the network in a race, and whichever comes back fastest, it will serve back. And this sounded a little bit strange at first, because I think most people would think, well, the cache would come back first, right? You'd always get the cache coming back first. But according to Sam and Google at this workshop, they said that they have actually seen cases where the network came back faster, and it seems that that's probably because of HTTP caching. So yeah, it's interesting. Maybe you just set them off in a race, see what comes back first. And also, of course, you could just say, just use the network or just use the cache as well. So that's a few little tips and things that I've learned about service workers doing this. The next theme of these lessons learned is around get user media, which is the API that I'm using to do the live video feed. The first tip probably sounds quite obvious, but when I started, I was a little bit naughty And instead of kind of doing input type equals file as like the baseline and then doing a get user media live feed on top of that if you had support, I just went straight in with the cool live feed video, and I thought I'll do the fallback later so that they can have input type as file afterwards. But I fixed that now. I've put in input type equals file, which lets them choose or take the photo. And actually the button for no, go for my live video feed, please, only actually gets injected into the page if they have support for it. So in that case, iOS here, for example, which doesn't have get user media support, they don't even need to see that button. I mean, it would be kind of nice to tease them with a button saying, yes, use this feature. No, no, you can't. But I thought maybe I'll be good. So they don't even need to see that. There's going to be a couple of Samsung Internet ones here, which are going to be, I'm going to share with you all. This is one that was tripping me up for a little bit too long, annoyingly. So weirdly, if you're in standalone mode, as in you load the app from the home screen, and you're pointing to your localhost developer site, then it doesn't seem to actually prompt for get user media permission. And that promise never fulfills, and you just have this blank screen like this. So I need to look into this a bit more and probably raise this bug, and hopefully we can get this fixed. But just in case any of you come across that, if you're doing some get user media stuff, yes, that made me realize that I just need to look at the live site, and then suddenly everything worked again. Another one also is not to rely on get user media giving you the video back in exactly the right dimensions that you asked for. So with get user media, you have a way of giving constraints, and you can say, ideally, I want it to be this size, the video, maximum this size. And so in Snapbot, I'm basically giving that same size for both, because both the ideal and the maximum is filling up that viewport that you've got inside the app. And in Chrome, that actually does come back with a video element of the right size. But in Samsung Internet, you can get a smaller video back than the maximum you asked for. So you may, well, yeah, what I'm doing is blowing it up to the amount that I want to show. And I'm doing that by rendering the video onto a canvas element that I've set to the right size. Now, this is the real fun one, saving images. Sounds really easy, doesn't it? You just want to press the button, download me an image, please. But there are a few issues. Well, first of all, how you'd normally save a client-side image is you do this common A download hack, which is basically just saying, create me an A element, an anchor element, put a download attribute on it. The download attribute you set to the file name of the file that you want to download. And you set the href to your data URI that represents your blob, your data object that represents your image that you've generated client-side, which in this case comes from the canvas element. And then you simulate a click on that link element, and that should then just come up saying, your image is downloading. And that would be all very good, except one thing is, yeah, with Samsung Internet at the moment, it says, no, you can't download an image that's not, or sorry, you can't download anything that's not HTTP or HTTPS. So something starting with data : doesn't work. But hey, we have service workers now, right? So we could do something really sneaky. We could just come up with some HTTP, HTTPS URL, right? That when they request it, the service worker intercepts, and then it responds with a data URI. Yeah, unfortunately, that doesn't work either, because there's a Chromium bug that means that A download links, the requests from A downloads are, they bypass the service worker, you can't intercept them. So we'll have to watch out for this issue in the Chromium issue tracker getting resolved before we can do that hack, alas. but maybe that's for the best. At this point, I thought, oh, well, you know, forget it. I'll just load this image up in a new tab, and you know, they can save it from there or something. This is when I was clutching at straws, you can see. And I thought I'll just do window.open and load up your image. Yeah, that doesn't work in standalone mode. You've got an app, really in this case, you're not inside a browser with multiple tabs essentially. And so, yeah, I was not sure exactly what I was expecting to happen. I thought I'd try it. Yeah, not only does your tab not appear for this tab that you're trying to open, but also the tab that you were viewing gets killed as well. So it's not so good, really. And another one, I have to say, with our browser as well, if you're in standalone mode, at this point I was thinking, well, the user can just long tap and press, and then it gets the save image menu, right? But that's blocked in standalone mode. You don't get the menu up either. So that doesn't work so well either. So I don't still have a very good answer for this right now, except for us to fix a few of these things. Hi, Martin.
Did you try create object URL?
Create object URL?
Yeah. You can take a blob and then put that into like a temporary asset URL with HTTP. Try that.
And then you would just link to that URL, would you? But then you'd still want to have that as an A download link, wouldn't you? So it downloads straight away?
If that works with the download.
So there's an idea. Oh, yeah.
So regarding the service working approach, you said that it didn't work because A download bypasses it.
Yes.
So what if instead A download you use regular A, but from service working you return content type application object stream? So it forces browser to download instead of displaying.
I've got a feeling that I tried it at some point briefly, but I've forgotten. I might have to try that again. That does sound worth a try, doesn't it? Just for anyone who didn't hear this, about not having an A download link, just having normal A, but then in the service worker you change the media type, yeah, the content type. So I'll give that a go. Thank you. Oh, and there's one other thing that was really tripping me up for an hour or two anyway. So if your image is actually just too big, and right now I can't actually define what too big is because I haven't looked into this, I'm afraid, enough. But when my image was too big, then the save image option, the download image option, is disabled in Chrome and in Samsung Internet. So I, unfortunately, for now, just for now, hopefully, until I sort of check exactly what the limits are, instead of rendering out your image that you've just snapped onto the canvas with the right device pixel ratio, so nicely for your Retina screen, I'm just forgetting that and just actually just rendering it to the actual size that is in the screen, so you get a worse quality picture. But it does mean that you can press save and download it. So all of this led me to writing a blog post about these problems, and another developer, Sime Vides, I think his name is pronounced, he wrote this up as a discussion on discourse for the Web Incubator community group, WICG. And so there is a discussion thread there at bit.ly/save-image-feature. If you're interested in this, and if you have ideas, if you might be able to help push this idea forwards, and we get something maybe that works a bit better in these browsers, then please, do contribute there. We haven't really come to any conclusions yet, but it feels to me as though what we really want to do is have some kind of file save API that we can use and just say, when the user presses that button, download this image, please. And if that just worked, that would be amazing. Just a few other little tricky things along the way in case you want to build your own app like this. If you use input type file and you get a photo back from that, from the camera, then when you then render that onto your canvas, most of the time it probably just come out the wrong way, be rotated around the wrong way. And that's because the browser encodes the orientation in the EXIF data in the photo, and unless you read that out and rotate it around the right way, then it won't appear in it correctly. Thankfully, there was a nice little library that solved this for me, and it wasn't too big to add. It was pretty lightweight, one called JavaScript Load Image. So I recommend that. Also, the other neat thing about it is it can resize your photo down to the right size for you as well. Excuse me. So you can say essentially like object fit contain, but for your image inside that canvas. Another thing that's a bit tricky is calculating the text bounds on your canvas. And I need to do this for the emojis that I'm displaying when you tap an emoji down, which is text. And I need to know the text bounds to know if you've touched it again, because you can drag them around. It was a bit fiddly, but it's okay at the moment, because basically I'm just ensuring that I center align it both horizontally and vertically. And I can assume they're basically square. And so both dimensions, it's basically the font size, so it's okay. But yeah, another one that tripped me up, that was, yeah, another tricky one. When you resize those emojis up, so you tap and you drag them apart, at one point I was actually changing the scale value and scaling up like that, but it was hard to position them correctly then. It was affecting things a bit strangely. So I thought, well, I'll just up the font size instead. So I was scaling that up as you're dragging that out. But as soon as the font size goes up about 240 pixels, then it just disappears entirely for some reason. And I don't know why yet, but I thought I'd let you know in case it comes up. So yeah, for now I just had to limit that scale factor to a maximum. So that is basically where I'm up to with Snapbot. It's probably been a little bit too much work for what it is with all of those things that are cropped up. But I hope that now, from now on, I can easily, like a breeze, add new features and have this working really well. So some ideas for what to add to it next. Push notifications would be a nice thing to experiment with. I know Phil's done some stuff with push notifications, and this is an example on the screen of an app that Ada's building. It's a podcast app called Podle, Podle.audio, if you want to check it out. So it's a progressive web app that lets you find and stream podcasts. And she has added push notifications to know when you have your podcast updates, when a new podcast is released. And I would like to experiment with this as well, and I hope I'm not shoehorning it in, but I think that Snapbot would benefit from, say, for example, if I was adding a new feature or a new theme, you know, Halloween just happened, you want some Halloween filters, so maybe if people opted in, you could let them know that there's an update for them. The other thing that I'd really like to try soon is the Web Share API. So this is something that Chrome developers are working on, and it's a new feature. I don't know if you saw that a long time ago. There's been lots of work from people like Paul Kinlan around sharing on the web and how that interacts with the native share functionality. But they have a new API that's kind of simplified down. It's a smaller nut that they're trying to crack, and it looks pretty neat. So you can just say, I want to share this type of file, and it should come up with the right options. So that could work for your photos, hopefully. Of course, I need to add head tracking, which I haven't done yet. But if I'm going to make this, be way better than Snapchat and those kind of things, then I need to have those features where you can add things onto your face and they track you as you move around. So hopefully I can get onto that at some point. Has anyone done that especially on mobile? Has anyone done any face tracking, head tracking? No, I'm interested to see how that's going to work in terms of the performance and everything. The demos that I've tried so far have not been amazing on mobile, but we'll see.
Definitely a progressive enhancement.
Yes, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's a progressive enhancement, yeah. And loads of other stuff adding different brushes, undo and redo. Local storage might be nice, maybe to experiment with a local database. I mean, to store your photos, perhaps. I don't know. It's an experiment, perhaps. And any other suggestions people might have, at the end? Shout out. Well, one of the things that I think is potentially interesting about Snapwhat is that it's very, very client-side based until you come to that point where you want to share it. And this is, I think, potentially an interesting aspect of progressive web apps and how everything's moving on to the client side. Until the point in Snapwhat at the moment where they actually go, I want to send this to Twitter, that whole thing is completely on their own, inside their browser. And when they save it, it will just be on their device and it's not going to any kind of server or anything like that. And so in terms of social apps, I think that's potentially an interesting area about having like these pure client-side things. So I kind of was not really looking at this server sharing stuff too much, but I did want to get in tweeting out. But yeah, maybe there's a way, would there be an easy way to just sync to a cloud or something if you wanted to, yeah. So that's about what's next for Snapwhat. What about next for progressive web apps in general? Well, I thought I'd share a few things that are on the horizon. One thing that we were just talking to our colleague, Junkie Song, about today, he's one of our colleagues based in Korea, and he's one of the core editors of the service workers spec. And he said they're looking at a few different things for essentially enhancing new versions of both the service worker API and the cache API. With service workers, they are looking at performance improvement about how that's basically starts up and kicks in the first place. And with the cache API, they're looking at essentially simplifying that implementation and improving that as well. So I'm sure we'll see some more advances in the API and the implementation soon, and hopefully some more improvements. There's also background sync, which actually now I hadn't realized until recently is available in Chrome behind an origin trial. So an origin trial, if you haven't come across it before, is where you basically have to apply as a developer and give them your origin, your domain name, and they say, okay, you can use this feature, we're going to whitelist you. They previously did it for Web Bluetooth, and they're also doing it for background sync. So if you have been in the native app world and you're used to this idea that you can just have the app running in the background and downloading updates and things as it's going along, then you may well be interested in exploring this background sync for the web as well. There's also foreign fetch on the horizon, which is pretty interesting because it's essentially service workers, but cross-domain, cross-origin. So as a third-party provider of an API or a CDN, for example, something that lots of other people will be requesting, you can say, actually, I want to use this service worker when requests come to me from all those different apps. So this is took me a little bit to get my head around it maybe, but this could potentially be quite powerful. Hopefully will help to really speed up the web. And this again is something that the Chrome guys are working on. And yes, as I say, it's already available as an origin trial. There's also talk of allowing multiple service workers for parallelizing tasks, which could be quite interesting. So instead of you just having one service worker instance that runs essentially in the background of your application, could you potentially spin up multiple ones and share work between them? Well, if you wanted to do some high performance stuff, that could be really interesting in the future. And one that just cropped up, did anyone go to Dean Hume's talk just a couple of weeks ago? Yes. So I watched his talk online afterwards, and one of the things that he mentioned I hadn't come across before, but on Chrome and Opera, and I think Yandex as well, there's a data saver option that users can enable on their phone. And when they enable this, one of the things it does is add a header to every request saying save data on or something. And you, regularly, just as a web server, you could look at that header and say, oh, okay, I want to actually send back maybe some a lower res content or lower bandwidth content. It's also obviously related to service workers though, because you can do this in your service worker as well. You could read out that this header is in the request and say, oh, okay, I'm going to give you back something different, or I'm going to then make a subsequently different request to the server to get back something different for you. So if any of you would like to do some selfies, you can just take a front-facing photo as well. If you want to snap something else, is at snapwhat with a dot between W and A. And the source code is all up on our Samsung Internet repository, which also has Ada's podcast app that she's working on, and we're working on a bunch of stuff around WebVR as well. So that's pretty much me done. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions, feedback? Hi.
Thank you, Pete. When you leave Samsung and you IPO with Snapwhat and you're a multi-billion-pound organization, you'll want to think about testing.
Yes.
You said you caught a bug in Lighthouse. Have you had a thought about how you'd do that in production?
I don't, perhaps others might know more about Lighthouse specifically than me, but I think as well as being a Chrome extension, there's a way that you can embed it into your automated tests, right? So potentially you could do that. But that's an interesting area, isn't it? Because I haven't spent too much time thinking about testing Snapwhat yet. But yeah, it kind of turns some things upside down, I suppose, doesn't it? In terms of normally, you could have these automated testing suites where you're pinging things from different places, and what about when there's no network connection? Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that at the moment, but if anyone else wants to chip in.
Yeah. You could just tell him you're sitting next to him.
Yeah.
So Steve Souders wrote a blog post. I'm not sure it was on SpeakEv. I'm not sure it was on Steve's blog about using web page tests to test service workers, where essentially you can say block anything or block everything and then try load the page. And if the service worker is active, you'll get the content that's in the service worker.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Back to the front. Oh, I'll come to you in a sec.
You mentioned that you hadn't done much testing, but I just wondered if you had any idea on how this would behave on iOS at all.
Yes. So, well, obviously I've been kind of testing things as I've been going along. I meant more of the automated testing, but on iOS, at one point I mentioned about get user media and it not being supported. So it does work on iOS because essentially the progressive web app technologies are progressively enhanced. So the service worker script will get registered if you have service worker support. So on Safari, that bit doesn't happen. So you can't use it as an offline app on Safari, but you can use it as a normal web application. And so this is one of the things that is coming up quite a lot at the moment, that people at browsers like us are trying to help people to see that you don't have to wait till Safari support comes along to start using these technologies.
Hello.
There are, hey, it's a day.
What are you doing?
It's a day late for Halloween. There are, people like Financial Times, people like Guardian. They're big players using it in production now already, and I think it's fine to do that if you're sticking with standards and if you progressively enhance.
called
So yeah, you
Door.
could try it out on the iOS and see what you think.
Yeah. There you go. Got like, I don't know, 55 of us here tonight and need a little help to open the door there. But there you go. Right, let me just come back to this gentleman here. You had a question?
So I was just going to ask, so I had a similar question. I was just going to mainly ask about how you feel that progressive web apps compete with, of course, obviously the App Store and Google Play Store, and whether you think that it would be harder for people to find your app because, when things are on the App Store, it's very, very easy to, obviously go on the App Store, do a search, if my friend tells me, while if I was going to go through Safari, some people might get a little bit intimidated or scared by that. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I think probably the discoverability of apps on the App Store is not as good as people think it is, for a start. And one of the things I think that's been shown is that after the sort of top very small percentage of apps, the discoverability of all the others there is not very good. So that's one thing to bear in mind. In terms of the web, I mean, we've got search engines that are very good, and you have all the other ways to disseminate links to your web page. And generally, the first place that people are going to come is your website. In most cases, I'd suggest. And so instead of then at that point saying, hey, now you have to go off to the App Store and download something, it's nice to actually just present them back that application straight away. So they can use it instantly and then they can save it offline as well. So I'd say that. I do think that probably the web has some more work to do in terms of web app stores and about surfacing these up. So we're not at the end result yet, but I think it's getting pretty good already. Yeah.
Also, just to add a bit to Peter's answer, if I'm not mistaken, I think Microsoft is kind of working around discoverability, and if you have some sort of progressive web app, then you should be able to find it on the store, on their store when you just do a search. So that would kind of help in that sense. And I wouldn't be surprised if Google at the Play Store, once there's a big selection of progressive web apps, it's just something that it's technically just another app that you're going to find on the store. So
with a lightning icon.
Yeah, there's already it's very easy to like bind your app to your home screen and stuff like that. It's already kind of, fairly easy. Anybody else? Questions? Yeah, another one, right? Okay. He always does it with a smirk.
Be a tricky one.
So we've primarily talked about Android here. And the challenge we have is there's a lot of iOS devices out there. What do you think the likelihood is that iOS will support Service Worker and the other PWA type app technologies? And sorry.
Well, I know that they're speaking at these web communities about service workers. I think there was revealed a little while ago in a kind of unofficial 5-year plan document, they had service worker bullet point. So at least thinking about it anyway. And of course, I can't really speak for them too much, but I think that I think that it will be coming personally as what I'm imagining. I think that it will. I think that the ball is rolling with this now, and I think that it will be hard to just completely sit back from it. So I think they will probably be getting involved. So I think it's a matter of time, and I don't think we really have to wait in terms of adding these technologies as well.
So the Samsung internet browser, so why another browser, and is it like based out of Chrome? Do we need to test our service workers on Samsung separately from Blink? Because even in Chrome, there are so many things that are breaking and stuff like that. So do we need to test separately on Samsung Internet? And are there web drivers for it? How do we automate it?
Yeah, I realized, first of all, that I probably talked about a lot of problems in this talk. And it was mainly because I just wanted to share a really honest run through of this experience of developing this app. And of course, most of the issues are actually more on the media side around the video and the images and things. In terms of the service worker support, Samsung Internet, well, Junkie Song is one of the core editors of the spec, and he's working very closely on that at Samsung Internet. And so we feel as though we got very good support for these progressive web app technologies. It's based on Chromium. It's just a few versions behind the latest version of Chrome because our release cycle is a bit slow at the moment. But being based on Chromium means that the core of things, the general browser underlying it is the same. Rendering is very, very similar from my experience so far. So I haven't really come across anything with Snapbot anyway that where it's looked different across the browsers. The only things that I've come across are those kind of things that I've shared that are more about things around the outside. Is it menu displayed? There's certain weird corner case issues which we obviously need to find and help fix. And one of the reasons for our team starting up is to help with that and to get feedback from developers, feed that back in, start being more open, help the company to share about what's going into the browser and what we're fixing and things like that. So we're at the start of that journey really, because we're quite a new team, but I hope we will be able to make a positive difference. And yeah, if you would like to test on the browser, that'd be great, and we could try and help you if you'd like to.
I will come to you again, Andy.
Also, just to add a bit to Peter's answer, in a way, it kind of makes sense if you have, let's say, your own devices to be able to incorporate, for example, certain features like being able to sign into websites with your fingerprint. It also makes sense if you have invested a bit into, let's say, web VR, and you have your headset, then it just makes it so much easier to make, for example, load a web VR, load a web page that has some VR content, take your phone, put it on the Gear VR, and just do the seamless, kind of switching. So that's why, in a way, it would make sense to have another browser.
Sorry, I'm going to answer that question for you from an independent point of view. So the question that the person in front of me asked about, should they test on Chrome versus Samsung Internet? From what we see from customer sides, after iOS, Samsung devices are the most popular device in the UK. So unless you're dealing with a really nerdy audience who have Nexus devices, you should probably test on Samsung Internet before you test on Chrome.
Thank you.
Do you have WebDriver support?
I don't have the answer to that right now, I'm afraid. Sorry, I should know that by now, but I'll have to look at that and come back to you. Yes, sorry.
Clearly, there's no one in the room that can answer that question. So that's also quite enlightening,
Yeah.
right? As to how many of us may be actually testing what we should be testing. Any more? Yep.
What web server did you use for Snapbot? Web server, Python, Node,
right,
Go,
yeah.
whatever.
Sorry, I meant to mention that. It's literally just thrown up on GitHub pages because the only actual server-side aspect of the whole app is for OAuth for Twitter, I'm using Hello.js, and I'm using their default OAuth server. So at that point, it goes and a request from them. But otherwise, it's a single page app. It's just client side that's just served from GitHub pages, and the rest is client side in JavaScript. So I think obviously it's good for me to be experimenting with mixing it with server-side technologies as well. But for the moment, I just wanted to focus on the front-end piece and see what I could do with that.
Have you come across any memory limitations when you were developing the app, when the memory that your cache was taking was bigger than some code, and the browser in that case removed some of it?
I haven't run into that in a way that I've noticed anyway. So do you mean in terms of your service worker cache, you can have something cached, but it won't necessarily remain if your device runs low on space, then you could lose it. Yes, I haven't tested that by filling up my device, and I haven't reached that limit yet. But it's something to be aware of. There is, I believe, a spec that's in the works that's on the horizon for permanent storage. Well, I think it's around already. I'll have to check on the support, but there's a way that you can request to have permanent support for your application. And so that may help in that sense, but use another permission that the user has to grant. And then in that case, I guess it's basically the same as a native app, in that they have to then specifically delete it. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be cleared out when the space runs out.
I was just curious around. I haven't played around with these web apps very much, but when you save your web app to your home screen, are you forced into that native web browser? Because I imagine that, you know, certain, like for example Chrome, if you install that, it'll be more up to date. It'll have more features. It might have better functionality. Can you force your web app to take advantage of those?
So the browser that you save it to home screen from will be the one that it then essentially launches back out as. I'm not sure if there's any kind of way to disrupt that bit.
You know, like in terms of if you land on a website, sometimes they'll say upgrade to a new version of this browser to take advantage of the new features.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, it should be using, underlying it should be using the latest browser that you've got. So if you upgrade your browser and then you tap on that home screen again, it will be the new browser that's essentially launching it.
I'm thinking in terms of the Samsung browser, you're saying it's a couple of versions behind.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So there might be different levels of functionality there between browsers, and maybe you want to take advantage of the most recent.
In that case, then you'd just be switching the browser, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Any more, or can we let Peter get a drink? Right. Right. Okay. That's great. Okay. Well, I'd just like to say, obviously, big thank you to Peter once more. If we all give him a nice, appreciative round of applause.
Thank you.
I'm sure that progressive web apps is a subject that we will keep revisiting over the next 12 months of this group for sure. I mean, it is a technology that is seemingly, you know, continuously going forward. Like I said before, if those of you that this is the first time you've ever come to the group, please do spread the word. We're a very friendly bunch, and I'd like to see the group continue to attract new members. It'd be really, really great. So do spread the word. If you are going to Velocity, I see you there. If not, come along to the Christmas quiz. I'll see if I can eke some prizes out of my sponsors. Maybe you might be able to come up with a few things to make that a little bit more competitive. And obviously Andy Davies will start with a -10, a -10 count on his score, so that he doesn't. And Simon can have a -5. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. All right. So yeah, and if don't see you before, do you know? See, it's like start of November now. If you don't come to December, do have a good Christmas and New Year, and hopefully see you in the New Year. And I think coming along to Ada's Web VR talk will be really, really interesting. So do come along for that one. Anyway, so stick around, get a beer. Pizzas will be turning up in a few minutes, and there'll be plenty to go around. I can tell you that. We may be visiting the homeless again tonight. So, but we'll see how hungry you all are. Anyway, thank you very much, and see you again next time.